Hello everyone, I'm Brian and welcome to my KuroPixel channel. What I want to talk about today is the original Power Rangers. I think it's called MIghty Morphin Power Rangers. It came out when I was growing up. It was 1993. The way that I saw Power Rangers was I was young and I would often watch the Fox network. One day I saw this commercial and it was promoting this upcoming show called Power Rangers, and it looked really interesting, and I was like, okay. I remember after watching that first episode, it was so interesting for me because as far as I was concerned, I had never seen a program like this before. I mean, this was like, you had costumed heroes, and you also had like these big robots that would fight giant monsters, and of course, if looking at it now, the production values and everything, it's not very good, but so I got hooked on the show and I would watch it whenever it came on. I have one funny memory during the Power Ranger craze. I wanted to be a Power Ranger for Halloween, and I had heard that there were costumes in some of the stores. But there were none in my local area, so we had to go through my aunt that lived out of my town, and she had found some costumes, and she had quite a few for myself and my cousins, and I remember that it was you could choose between the Red Ranger and the Blue Ranger, and if you've watched the show, the Blue Ranger was always the geeky person, the computer guy. And while I did like him, the Red Ranger was very cool, so I wanted to be the Red Ranger. And I remember my cousin, he got really upset that I was going to be the Red Ranger. And well, I don't know what happened exactly, but in the end, we traded, and I was the Blue Ranger, and he became the Red Ranger. So everyone was satisfied and happy, maybe. In Power Rangers, you had 5 members. However, I think it was in the middle of the first season, this new character appeared. It was the Green Ranger, and he was this evil guy, but he had the same kind of costume as the Power Rangers, so that's what made him so different from all the other Power Ranger bad guys and villains. I mean, because this guy was cool. He had this shield on him, and he had this really cool dragon flute, although saying flute now makes him not sound so cool. But trust me, it was very cool, especially if you were in elementary school. And he had this dragon flute, and he would just whip that thing out, and he would just blow on that flute and summon this dragon Zord thing. It came out of the sea, and it was like Godzilla. After I think the first 2 seasons, my interest in Power Rangers kind of waned. I always loved the originals, and then they changed it. They had lots of different costumes and different villains, and everything changed. The cast changed. So then I wasn't really interested if the original cast wasn't there. It wasn't until I got older and maybe, the internet, everyone had the internet and we could learn more about it, that I realized that Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was adapted from a Japanese TV series. And there's the thing is, in the US, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was one of the first of these kind of shows. But in Japan, they had been doing this since maybe the 60s or the 70s. It's completely different. The Japanese show and the story and the characters, everything is different. And as a kid, I didn't realize, but going back now, you can easily see it, is the US studio took the fighting scenes from the Japanese series and then filmed the scenes where the American actors were not in costume. Although sometimes they did have scenes where they used costumes for the American version, but you can now tell when it is the Japanese footage and when it's US footage. One thing in particular is, and I noticed this when I was a kid, but I didn't put 2 and 2 together. I was a little slow. If you look at the Green Ranger, he's got that really badass shield that he has. However, if you look at some of the scenes that were shot in the US, you will notice that the Green Ranger's shield is like this very soft, like fluffy looking shield. It doesn't look nearly as cool as the Japanese footage. The Green Ranger was my favorite Power Ranger and still is of all time. I want to talk about this little guy. I picked him up when I was running around in Osaka a few years ago. It's this Green Ranger figure, or in Japan, he's the Dragon Ranger, which actually sounds way cooler than the Green Ranger. And it comes with this figure. This is a box figure, and they were doing some kind of anniversary or some kind of special, so they had all kinds of different Rangers in the box. I saw this in a store, and I was like, hey, why not? Before I started filming this video, I looked at the bottom of this box, and there is some candy in this box, and there is an expiration date on it, and this candy in this box expired in the year 2012. So I'm probably not going to eat the candy that's in this box. After I record this video, I'm going to go price check on the internet and see how much these are going for. I also want to talk about, there was a Power Rangers movie that came out maybe two years after the series started in the US, and I didn't really like the movie, and I couldn't put my finger on it until much later in life. The thing is, I enjoyed the original show that was with the fight scenes from Japan and everything. You had those stretchy costumes, and however, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie was completely American made, and you can tell if you look at the costumes in that movie, because the costumes are not the stretchy, tight-fitting costumes that allow the actors to run around, and the American costumes are more bulky and look like they have some sort of armor on them. For those of you that were either born much later or you were too old by the time Power Rangers came out, yeah, it's cheesy, but you know what? That was part of the fun, was just getting into it when you were a kid. What about you guys? Do you have any memories growing up with Power Rangers, or maybe you didn't get into Power Rangers? Maybe you got into whatever came after that. Or maybe you were too old at that time, so you were into something else. I'd love to know what it is, so please leave me a comment in the comments section and tell me, what were you into at the time that Mighty Morphin Power Rangers came out? Alright, so that's my trip down memory lane talking about Power Rangers. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.